Thanks for anybody who watched us stumble through trying to figure out the internet and video chatting, even though we do this 5 times a day. Yeah.
Never been live
Well,
on TikTok before, so woohoo.
that's true. Yeah, this is the first time that we've done this. Anybody who follows me knows that I post a lot on here, but I don't often do live stuff. So I guess if you're new to me, my name is Brenton, and I'm an elemental practitioner and a mental health practitioner. And this is my colleague, Rachelle, who's actually the founder of the practice I work with, Creative Spirit Collaborative.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rachelle, and the founder of Creative Spirit, and really happy to be here. And we wanted to try this out and see how it goes. So welcome if you're here with us. And we want to talk a little bit about yoga today, and we'll go into a little bit about that, what that actually means, why it's applicable to today, and why it's applicable to social justice, and why it's a valuable ancient technology for us to work with.
Yeah, and it sounds kind of strange maybe to think yoga is a solution to global war and elite pedophilia and right stripping away and all these kind of crazy things that are in our face. But there really is a lot of power, and you and I can both attest to that, having spent decades doing these kinds of practices. But I guess maybe I want to just start a little bit talking about what yoga actually is and what it's not, because I think in the West we have this idea that yoga is it's a workout. It's like Pilates. It's like a fitness class. It's something that we go to bump our bodies and move around and get our heart rate up, and then we leave, and then we go to the next one, the next day, and it feels good when we're in there, and we feel high when we leave the class, and then kind of like psychedelics, we end up in this place where we don't really have anything to sustain us. That's because we don't really understand what yoga is. And so maybe the last thing I'll say before I punt it to you, Rochelle, is that one of my favorite things to talk about when I facilitate yoga trainings is to talk about the root of the word yoga. And it comes from the Sanskrit word yuj, Y-U-J. And yuj means yoke. And I tell the story that when I started as a baby yogi, I thought when I heard that from my teacher that he meant yolk, like an egg yolk. And it made sense to me because I was like, oh yeah, everything together, and it's like the core that produces life. And I guess that's kind of true, but what we're really talking about is to yoke, Y-O-K-E. And I find that when I teach my yoga students this, about half of them don't even know what a yoke is or what it looks like. And it's that big wooden bar that goes across the back of oxen or horses or things like that. And the idea is that to yoke means to control or to direct, or even my favorite interpretation is to unify. So if yoga is more than an exercise and it actually means to unify or to direct, then it kind of opens up a whole world of possibilities for us.
Yeah, thanks for that. I like unify and also join. And the question maybe is, what are we unifying or what are we joining? And just that recognition right there is enough to look at like how this philosophy is applicable to the world today. There's so much division and chaos and violence and us versus them. And yoga is literally to unify humans with the earth, unify us with our own spirit, and us with the greater spirit. So that's an important piece that we can feel into and develop through this practice. And there's in the West, really what's known as what's called asana, the postures, the kind of like exercises that you were talking about. But there's this whole philosophy that's developed. It's called 8 limbs of yoga. And I don't know if we want to go through all of those 8 limbs, but to talk about why this is a valuable technology to use, and or at least to understand. It's very deep and complex, and I've been studying it for oh gosh, how long? 26 years or something like that, and there's always more for me to learn. But it has some considerations for who we are as human spirit beings and how we can live towards that, how we can move towards that, and how we can care not just for ourselves, but how we can care for the others around us and how we can care for the world. And I think that's why it's important right now.
I love that. And when I first joined CSC years ago now, haha, I remember, especially moving from Texas to the West Coast, that the social justice aspect of our approach to healing at CSC was a new thing for me because in the South I wasn't really exposed to that kind of work. I did do like activism work, I did community peace driven work, but it lacked a kind of fire that I experienced at CSC, and particularly with the world like it is now, I feel very activated and inspired to do this kind of thing. And I think it's a really beautiful thing to link deep spiritual practice like yoga with social justice work. And what we're talking about here is something that feels a little bit fringe for most of spirituality, because most of spirituality would have us be these very calm, withdrawn, everything is fine, kind of aloof beings, when in reality, spiritual work is fiery, it's messy, it's snotty, it's teary, it's poopy, it's all of those kind of messy things, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's really important. And yeah, I want to thank you for saying that because it's important um, to know that yoga enables us to kind of like dig our hands into the earth and into our shadow and into the shadow of society and really work with it and look at it and begin to unravel it. And I think, yeah, it's just so essential right now. I'm kind of on fire about this, saying like there's no time other than now because of everything that's going on in the world. And um, yeah, it's not spiritual bypass. It's not this, kind of solely transcendent experience. There can be some transcendence, but the transcendence is going through and going down and in order to arrive to that place. It's not just dissociation or not. A lot of times non-attachment gets kind of misunderstood. So it is really about facing what's present in all of us, what's present in the world, and working with that.
Yeah, I hot topic for me, spiritual bypassing right now. I feel like there's a lot of screaming from the rooftops that I want to do, and I'm reminded that I have to be patient with allowing people to awaken at their own time, because that's really what this cycle right now, this fiery kind of place that we're in, is about activation, but in kind of the patient unfolding of trees rather than this like desire for Brenton's brain to wake everybody up right now and revolute. It's like it's not really going to happen that way. However, I think that's part of the power in the practice of yoga is it reminds us that social justice is not just this one-time thing. It's this lifestyle that we become. Spiritual practice is not a one-time thing or a once-a-week thing. It's an entire lifestyle that sustains off the mat.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the things that I've really tried to bring to CSC is this yoga philosophy behind the scenes. And it's like every moment right here, this is a moment for practice. And I'm big on what I call applied meditation or meditation in action. It's not going to the mountaintop and meditating or sitting in your room by yourself. That can be part of it, but it's really for like when we face, some sort of racism or when we are seeing something that is unjust, that we are tending to it, we are present right in that moment. That's the meditation. And that's where this gets really messy and juicy also. That's very rich to face like that. And it's also kind of scary. And um, I would say a lot of times we actually need that nuance. We need that little bit of challenge. We need to be able to face our fears in order to have full mental health, to have full wellness. That's actually what brings us alive.
Mm. Okay, so question for you, since to kind of toot your horn, you have such a diverse myriad background. I mean, as not just a yogi and a practitioner of those types of, I don't know, lineages, but you're also a trained mental health professional. You're a therapist. You have been for a long time. You're a coach. So, how do you suggest to somebody to maybe to somebody who has been exposed to the more physical side of yoga, who has enjoyed the stretching and the practice and maybe even the community of classes, how do we make that translation to start taking those steps so that yoga is taken off the mat, particularly if it's these kind of sticky, uncomfortable places like social justice or social equality or things like that?
Yeah. It's a great question, and there's a myriad of answers. I would say my first answer is if your comfort zone is working on the mat, start to bring in a conflictual situation that you have in your life and bring it into the mat and work with the posture while it's in your mind. So that's one way, and that's kind of an easy, more comfortable way to do it. And then beyond that, I would say seek out people, books, information about what's the rest of this philosophy and how to engage it. We have a wisdom of yoga class that's offered every month, and it's coming up here pretty soon. So that's one way to engage it. Brenton will tell you more about that. I'm not great with those types of details. And there's a couple of texts, which probably a lot of people are familiar with. There's the Yoga Sutras. That's a really deep text, though. And it's my understanding is it's really written in a way that kind of cloaks some of the messages. So you have to live with it almost every day. You open it up and look at it and read it and talk to people about it, engage teachers and engage other people about. You don't have to use the word yoga. You can engage it just in an intellectual conversation, a discourse. And then the other one is the Bhagavad Gita, and that one probably is even a little bit more confusing. It's about war, but it's really about the war within our own minds, and how do we face that, and how do we face the conflicts outside, and how do we decide what is the right action. That's really what that story is about. So those are a few things. I'm curious, Brenton, if you have some ideas about how people might start to engage this philosophy.
Yeah, I like your suggestions, and I'm going to kind of echo you in some different ways. I guess what first come to mind is that it really is like in the moment to moment choices. And we've talked about it often. Washing dishes is one of my favorite asanas to practice yoga. Mowing the yard, right? Doing things like that, planting plants, working in the garden. Those are the best yoga teachers and yoga classes that I've been to. And I guess the other thing that I would say is to echo your thoughts about some of the holy and spiritual texts that yoga has been documented in for thousands of years. And I agree. I think a lot of us think, if we want to go deeper into yoga, we need to read about Patanjali and these 8 limbs of yoga and Ashtanga and that kind of thing. And that may be true, but I particularly find that I'm drawn to story. And I think right now on the planet, there's this kind of awakening and remembering of the power and importance of story, of aligning with our own story, of telling our story, of resonating with other people and joining in their story in collaborative ways. And so in texts like the Bhagavad Gita, there's a lot of teaching, and it's really, really thick with juicy stuff. And also, it's a story. It's an epic. It's a story that's part of a much, much bigger epic story. And so, to me, I like stuff like that because it slips me into that kind of dream state, into that deeper connection with the fact that humans have been part of this massive, beautiful unfolding story for millennia, and yoga has been a deep, important thread in that story, because it's been a way that humans have awakened to something deeper for thousands of years. So I like being able to immerse myself in stories and then find the ways that those stories kind of activate and are represented by me in my body, in my mind, in my life, my relationships, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
It brings more of the fun kind of mystical side to this if I'm immersed in myth and story, rather than can I keep my ethical monkey mind directed toward these things that are productive. That is dry like eating sand.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. And
important for sure. And
yeah,
also
yeah. No, I love that because it makes me think of like how Joseph Campbell really took to myth and studied myth around the world. And there's a thread of wisdom that's passed. Before we had written material, things were passed through these oral lineages, and that's where story was really valuable. And unfortunately, we've lost some of that. But there's these messages of wisdom and of information that isn't just like a dry didactic education. It's more of, it takes us weaving and meandering through, and we can start to interpret and understand in our own way. There's a lot of creativity which is needed to really understand some of this depth and imagination. So I'm glad that you brought that up. And I also want to say um, the piece about engaging yoga in the mundane activities of life. That's a really great place to drop in, because it's not like somebody pointing a gun in your face, right? But it's just enough challenge of like, oh, the dishes, I don't want to do the dishes. How do we bring full presence, full mindfulness, and even maybe find something of value in the dishes in that moment? So that's a great way to start. And I will go back to the eight limbs, and just, even though story is helpful, one of the things that I think is really valuable is bringing in the very first principle in the eight limbs, which is ahimsa, nonviolence. I like to call it benevolence. Um, and benevolence is this idea of like, how do we bring heart? How do we bring non-harm? And I'm not just talking physical harm, but mental, emotional, spiritual harm. How do we prevent that? Or how do we bring our life, our heart, our love to everything that we do?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, and I like the thought exercise of yoga that asks us to kind of hold dualism and contrast in mind and realize that two things can be true or multiple things can be true.
Mm.
Because the what yoga tells us is that it should always fall back to ahimsa, toward benevolence and non-harming. That should always, if there's ever a debate, we default to that and then go from there. And also, the Bhagavad Gita is an entire story set on a battlefield. And it ends in war and destruction, but it's kind of this necessary thing that has to happen. And the precedent of the story is that the main character doesn't want to fight. He wants to stay in this place of benevolence and non harming. And he's advised by Krishna, the Blessed Lord, to say, actually, you're here to fight. So this is deep, deep, deep stuff. I'm curious, how do we reconcile things like that?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that kind of seeming paradox, because it's really important. And like I said earlier, the Bhagavad Gita is often misinterpreted as a text about war. And yeah, I mean, I think it would be great for both of us to speak on this. I kind of hear the word fight as kind of like it's not like a fist to fist sort of thing, but it's more of like an emotional fight of like, I'm going to do, it's like kind of churning and bringing myself to the presence of awareness of like, what is essential? What is the priority? What do I have to pay attention to? What do I have to advocate for? What do I have to protect right now? That's the fight. It's not me against them. It's more against like my own social conditioning. It's a fight against that. And it's a fight against like really being discerning about what is just, and how I can support that. That's my interpretation.
Yeah, I love that, and that tracks with how I see it too. And you mentioned this in the beginning that the power in the Gita is recognizing the metaphor of the war within. And so I think that when we start to see those things, that I realize that the fighting that I'm here to do is for my own sense of truth. It's the fight to overcome my sense of limitations and shut down from trauma, and really kind of open up my heart and my belly and radiate everything that I'm here to give. And the fight is the uphill battle that comes with really stripping away all the bullshit that tells me that I can't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not saying that we should all like go just do whatever the fuck we want, right? That's it's not anarchy like that. It's about a deep-seated sense of awareness and truth and acceptance of who I am and what really lights me up as a human being on this planet now. And am I willing to prioritize that and then inspire others to do the same?
Yeah. Yeah. And before we close, I just want to say one thing. You know, it's there's a discerning quality in there. There's a wisdom that comes, from the ages to look at, like, if it's right for me, but it hurts other people, is that okay? Right? Because I think there's something in there. It's like, oh, we can be flooded with, like, it's right for me, right? Gold plated, you know, White House, for example, that's right for me. But how does it impact all the other beings in the world? So that's the piece that I think yoga brings, is like this presence of awareness of, like, how do I live more from my heart, and how do I also simultaneously enable others to live more from their heart? And sometimes that does mean fight.
That's so good. Yeah. The idea that individuality is best fulfilled through unity, not through fighting for isolation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or
Yeah.
domination or superiority. Yeah.
Yeah. All of the hierarchical, patriarchal models that we have in place now. Yeah. Yoga is it's not an easy path. It never has been. And I think it's perhaps never been so challenging.
Yeah.
As when we're in the midst of societal kind of upheaval, and even though it may not look like rioting in the streets, right, there is an inner kind of threshold crumbling that's happening. We are in tower energy right now, in a lot of different ways, and yoga is certainly a way that I have come to learn how to navigate those places. And again, it doesn't mean that we just like ohm our way and float through the destruction and then poof, we land and everything's fine. It just means that I'm a little more connected to my breath as the shit hits the fan. And I'm a
Mm-hmm.
little bit more centered in my own sense of responsibility as I'm wading through the field of everybody else's fear.
Ooh, yeah, that's powerful. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear mongering going on, and there's a lot of chaos and a lot of violence. It's really valuable to find a way to center ourselves and stay grounded, and to you know, make good choices in this time, not create more suffering. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Amen. Well said. Yeah.
So,
It's easy. Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Nothing. Period.
Yeah, I was just going to say that this is, again, is our first TikTok live, and we're just kind of orienting. We have a podcast that we do, and we wanted to give this a try and see what it's like to do it live on TikTok. Um, yeah, and Brenton, maybe you can share a little bit more about all the things we have going on, or
Yeah, so many of it feels like what we're offering today is just kind of been birthed from conversations that you and I have had over the years, like
yeah,
taking a hike in the forest or sitting outside in a meadow in between business agenda items. And so it makes sense that these offerings have kind of evolved during a time when it feels like there's a lot of kind of spiciness and activation and waking up. And we feel very called to continue to offer these insights to other helping professionals because we're going to have to do this together. And so, one of the ways that we do that is through our other recorded offerings and practices. And we keep all of these on our Patreon. It's free to join. But we are going to continue to branch out to recorded and live conversational pieces, podcast style things like this on TikTok, on YouTube, and then our regular podcast episodes. And if you like this content, if you like this particular material that we're talking about, Rachelle and I co-host study groups that meet monthly via our Patreon. And one of them, like Rachelle mentioned, is a Wisdom of Yoga study group. And we really take yoga philosophy and we kind of open it up and unpack it in ways that are really applicable in the body, in relationships, in the field of humanity right now. And we're actually going to begin talking about the Bhagavad Gita and exploring that whole story in the months to come. So I have a link in my bio for all of this information. You can check it out. Our Creative Spirit account, we'd love you to follow them too, but it's a much newer account. We don't have links and stuff like that yet. Yeah.
thanks for sharing, and thanks everybody who joined us. It feels really special. It's a time where we want to open up and share what we have, what's been valuable for us, and this is a new way to do that. It's an experiment, and it feels good to do it, actually. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
these conversations always feel good.
yeah, and then what we're hoping for is more and more people to engage with and have these conversations. There's wisdom in community, and that's what we're trying to tap into here too.
Amen. Love that. Yeah. Well, I look forward to hopping back on with you probably next week in our next little recording and jam session here. So hopefully we'll figure out TikTok and post about it and be able to give you invitations and invites. But otherwise, we'll be here and we'll keep it going until we figure something out.
Cool. Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Rochelle, and thanks everybody. We'll see y'all soon.